That's where those clips throw you off and give you a sense of magic that's not magic. They got beat. They got beat by some good teams, and Larry he didn't dominate every game. You had Tim Eubank and Paoli, who's throughout the book. You had Kurt Gilstrap. You had Dave, and all these guys went on. Mike Liegers, yeah, they all went on to play. Mike Liegers went to DePaul, Indiana DePaul, but the others all started out Division I teams. And so these guys were good. So Larry just wasn't out there winning game after game like those clips show. He had to earn it. In that junior year, he wasn't even the main player. When they went into the sectional, the Courier had a special in Springs Valley, and it was about those seniors. And the main player was Steve Land. And Larry was in one of the pictures, but he wasn't mentioned as one of the main players. And Jim Jones was so devastated by that loss. They lost to Lagodi. You were at that game.
Two-pointer that year.
Two-pointer and the ball.
At the end of the game.
Game. They had a shot to tie. I think it was Beezer that took the shot. And the ball went, and I've heard people talk about this, how it spun down deep into the net and spun back out and back for a while. The Courier Journal reporter talks about that and has a nice thing, which I include in my book about that. And then it spun out, and that was the game. So that was devastating. And then they lost to Orleans. Those were the games that they lost. That
Orleans handled Springfield in that semifinal round pretty well.
Yeah. So Bird wasn't invincible, and he wasn't the greatest. And so one of the stories, here's another freebie, is that Mark thought, how do we help Larry? Larry said in his autobiography, Drive, that if anyone was the star of their family in basketball, it was Mark, because he was just a really good player. He got an academic scholarship to Oakland City. That's where I met Mark. That's where I met Larry. One of the things I say in the book is I knew Larry Bird as Mark Bird's brother. I knew Larry Bird before he was Larry Bird. He was Mark Bird's brother, and I think that's how I phrased it, because Mark was the basketball stud. So the story is that Mark went to the coach and said, "Hey, I got my brother here, and he's pretty good. Can he come and we consider him for a scholarship?" Because no one was looking at him. Indiana State started looking at him because they came to see Steve Land play, and they noticed, hey, this guy's pretty good too. But Larry was 6'3", and I don't think he was that tall at the beginning of the season, but he's 6'3" at the end, and maybe 150 pounds by that time. Started out maybe 130. So the coach said, "Is he great?" And Mark said, "No, he's good." And he said, and the coach said, "Well, we got good. We need great." So no, he wasn't there. That summer, he grew 4 inches. So now we're looking at a guy who played forward guard, who was 6'7", who could play
a ball handler
who could play
the big game.
Yeah, the big game. He could play the big game.
Yeah.
And he lifted weights. I don't think people realized weightlifting was just frowned upon back in those days.
Yeah, I think at Springs Valley we had a universal machine come in, and roughly around Larry's time, give or take, up in the corner of the gym.
I think his junior year that came up, because I've heard different people talk. But that made a difference for him, because he added strength, and so he could shoot out farther. So he was smart enough. So that's when you start seeing that dedication to things. But he always said, somebody asked him about how good Eddie was. He was 6'6", I think, it played in Indiana State, and whether he's going to make it or not. I said, I don't know if he's a pro player. And they said, "Why not?" And he said, "Because I'm 6'9.5", and he's 6'5". That's the difference. It's the height. And he said himself, that probably made the difference. And you can see that in the picture. I've got a picture of they hadn't caught on. Nobody realized he grew right before their eyes, but they had a picture of him standing beside Steve Land, and you could see Larry was a little taller, and everybody said, "Oh, is his hair different, or what's going on?" And they measured him, and my gosh, he's grown. And so they knew they had that going for them. I want to talk about a couple of his moments that he said woke him up and made him dedicate himself.
But before you go there, just if you're just joining, Dr. Randy Mills is publishing. He's written a book that focuses on Larry Bird's senior year at Springs Valley High School, the basketball prowess, the team, but it also expands and brings in other communities, other individuals, and it will be released November 5th.
Yes. So Larry says that one of the moments that made him on fire, just changed his life, was seeing his brother play and score the winning free throws at the sectional in 71. If you might remember, they came in, I think they came in, Springs Valley came in 12-7, but they were hitting on all cylinders, which Jim Jones was famous for that.
He's a tournament coach.
His coach. He always said, I don't care what we do in the season. It's all getting ready for the, and that took Springs Valley a while, I think, to wrap their head around it. And I talk about there's Jim's throughout the book, but that struggle he had, he almost lost his job there because he was 5-12 and then 6-12, I think, into his first 2 years, and had to run the table there in that year that they went deep into the tournament. But anyway, Larry's not going to the games. He's too shy. They make him nervous. He's not even going to these varsity games, but he goes to see his brother play, and he sees his brother as the hero. And he says in his book Drive, I wanted that. I wanted that. I wanted what he had, and he got that scholarship. So Mark's an important piece to that. And there's other things I mentioned there too. But there's another time, a moment that he said turned him to that too, another incident. And that was when he scored the 2 winning the free throws in a sectional game. That game that he describes in his book Drive is in all the biographies about Larry Bird when they talk about his high school. And there's very little, by the way, about his high school games, but there's several inaccuracies in that.
Well, you had basically weekly newspapers in the community, the Springs Valley Herald. You had the Tuesday, Thursday Paoli Republican that came out and covered, and you had the call-in to the Courier Journal, the Bedford Times.
And you had the Jasper.
It's really all you had.
Yeah, and you had the Jasper Herald.
You had Jasper, but they didn't cover his games.
No, not like that.
In depth.
But they started when Jerry Burge, I dedicate the book to Jerry Burge. Jerry Burge brought Larry Bird into the limelight in the state, because even by his senior year, people didn't know who he was. So I correct some things in that, and that's really my favorite part, is when I go back and I set that record straight. And it's interesting because you see, just as I struggle with telling my story, the spirit of the moment rather than the actual facts of how you're perceiving that as an adolescent, and you're creating your story. You're creating your heroic story that's going to guide you.
And that's the heart of the books you've written. And we're going to talk more. Dr. Mills has been gracious enough to agree that in coming weeks, we're going to pick 2 or 3 chapters of the book, and we're going to deep dive into further in that setting. But Dr. Mills, let's come back. So the book's getting ready to be released November 5th. You've got a book signing scheduled up in French Lick coming right after that.
Yeah, November the 14th. I've got another on the 21st at Jasper. I hope to do, I need to get in contact, but I hope to do Lagodi, Paoli, and Orleans, because those were the 4 big.
And your locations for the book signing in French Lick and Jasper?
Both of them will be at the libraries, Melton Library and French Lick, and the Jasper Library. I don't know yet about the others. I got to contact them, and I'm sure I'll be able to go there. Want to do Washington too. So I'm going to start local, and I'm going to move out. I'll do Terre Haute. I'll go to Indianapolis, Evansville, and so forth.
You also alluded to Facebook. You've been putting some snippets out.
Yes.
About the book, but also about some interesting high school things around that. How can people follow you on Facebook and garner some information and know when the book signings are going to be?
Well, it's Randy Mills. Go to Facebook, and there's more than one Randy Mills, but I'll be the one where my mom and dad are sitting there with 2 babies. With my
black and white. It's a black and white.
Yeah, black
picture,
and white.
right?
My brother's 11 months older. That's the story in my book. I talk about, of having to have we're Irish twins, and I'm the younger. And so I had to struggle some too. So I guess I identify with Larry in that regard, that older brother and so forth. But yeah, go on that. I do a lot of basketball history. I've got a blog site, and rmillsauthors.com. And if you go to the blogs, you'll see pieces on Jim Jones and Larry Bird and Illinois high school basketball and local Southern Indiana high school basketball of that day.
My brother, before I let you go, let me ask this question of you. As a writer, someone who's poured their heart and soul, this has been a 2 or 3 year journey for you, if not more. You go back to the first year at Lagodi, 1974. Little did any of us know the seed was being planted for Randy Mills to 51 years later, write and publish this book. It's fascinating when you think about it.
Yes.
And it's fascinating largely having grown up in the era of the 60s with the civil rights movement, and then the 70s, and the stardom of Larry Bird, and being right there on the sideline, just watching and not really being able to appreciate. As you bring that era back for a moment, and we're reading the book in the future, what's your hope? What do you want your readers, if you had your druthers or your point of emphasis, what would you want all of us who's about to read that book for the first time to come away with?
There are Larry Bird fans out there who are younger that will love this book, but this is a baby boomer book. This is our story, our age, and it's coming to an end.
Yeah. I see. And you may not be able to see it, but there's an emotion piece there.
Yeah.
Dr. Mills has loved writing this book, and I've just been blessed at times that he's picked up the phone to call with a question or two. I haven't helped him in any way, shape, or form, but it's just been awesome to hear that discussion.
But it's our story, folks.
It is.
It's our story. And I promise you, these games will come alive. That's when the magic took over for me.
There you go.
When I would start writing about those basketball games, I don't know what was taking over, but I think I really.
You were right back in the bleachers.
Yeah, I was in the bleachers, and I was there, and I was with Jerry Burge, who was in those bleachers. They're all alive to me, and they were. You know, you look back, and those memories they'll be alive as long as we're breathing. So that's my selling point. If you like the basketball of the golden age, and you want to really go back there and feel that moment and be in that time. Now you have to earn it a little bit, because as a writer, I always give information that's going to help you understand more deeply what's going on. And people claim, where's the basketball game?
What the era was like.
Yeah. And
The
when
landscape.
you get there, you will appreciate, because you will bring in that knowledge to those games, and it's going to mean more to you. It's a little trick of writing. I did a lot of combat stories of Vietnam and Korean War, and had that people would claim, where's the battles? And then when they get there, oh my gosh, now I know what these guys went through, because I knew what they carried, what was going on in their lives. But again, thank you for having me here. This is a very deeply important book to me. If you told me I was going to write a basketball book after writing a lot of military history books about combat, I would have said you were crazy, but you never know.
Well, Dr. Mills, I much respect for you and appreciate you. And let me just speak for a moment. And, you reach phases of life, right? And
Yes.
we're blessed when God just has that fog removed, and you can look back and, wow, just like looking through the clear sky during the window right now in this fall morning, when its temperatures are cooler, a bit of fog and some frost, you kind of see, okay, I get it. I know now why some things came into place as they did. And the naive focus that as a 14-year-old, a teenager, a 20-year-old is gone.
Yes. Yeah.
What you have done is help, just personally, I thank you, because it's really brought back an opportunity for me to dive further into the appreciation of the experience I had personally. Just watching Larry, growing up in that wonderful community, and the work that Jim Jones did, with the basketball program, what he represented. People like Gil Fye, who started the football program there in the 1960s, had much success. The late Charles Akers, Chuck Akers, and Bill Harris, and John Emmons, Gary Holland, Larry's coach, but then all the teachers, the men and women who come through the school. This is bringing that back for me, because, hey, I have a closeness with one of four valedictorians of our senior year. I look back and just in all of those four valedictorians, Steve and Jeff and Jamie and Lisa, and just throughout my life, the impact they've meant to me from that class of 19, and they may not know that impact. The impact you've helped bring to me, what Larry, but then that team, Beazer, Brad, Chester and Doug and everybody else, Coach Holland, everybody, Jan Bond, Jim Quackenbush, Ralph Perkeiser, managers, Dave Dedrick, who has been big with WUME radio since he graduated high school. Those people, they're more than just greatness in action. Because, when I was younger, the thought was, well, you got to be great. You got to do this big thing. So I held myself back and didn't do anything. Those individuals have done it and built a life of excellence. this book brings me back not only
Yeah.
to that year with Larry, but to everything after that.
Now you're talking about an amazing community. I think the Fred Schlick West Baden is just one of a kind community. It's always fascinated me. I went as a college student one weekend to church service where I sang, and it was the American Baptist Church there in West Baden. And it was a pumpkin festival weekend.
Oh yeah.
And I thought, where did this place come from? This would have been in 70.
Wow.
Where did this place no, it would have been in 1670 maybe.
Okay.
And even then you could feel the history of it. So you're right. There's so much there. But what a community. And yeah, you when you write, if you have guidance from some inner wisdom that takes over, you'll find those connections that bring that out where the book becomes almost a living thing, doesn't it? It's alive.
And that's what an author seeks, right?
Yes,
That
yes,
voice,
yeah.
that connection, that attachment by the reader.
But you don't have it because you're smart. You have it because you submit to something that you don't understand. You follow things. I mentioned people taking over the book that I didn't see coming. Wayne Flick was one, and Steve Land was one. In fact, my epilogue ends with them.
And we're going to talk about that story in upcoming episodes.
Yes. So there's so much there, but it's our story. It's a baby boom story. And, it's so interesting. I remember when I first started getting together with the guys that were opponents of Larry, that was my first meeting that Gerald Leagers got together, and Mike Leagers and Dave Smith was there, and Tim Eubank and Mike McClain was gone by then. And we started talking about the stories, but we got teary-eyed going back at that. And it's basketball. Wow, what's wrong with us? But it meant so much.
There's life in that.
Yeah, there was life in that for us to play, but it was life in the community too.
Yeah.
It was for all of us. It just wasn't the players. It was the community.
It was the name.
Yeah, it
on
was
the chest.
the name on the chest.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. You mentioned that earlier, but that's going to be something I'm going to use in one of my blogs about small school basketball in Illinois, where I came from.
Well, look, thank you for joining us, Dr. Mills. God bless you, my brother. I love you to death. I appreciate what you've done with this, and I just enjoy the conversations. And again, we're going to come back and have more conversations with Dr. Mills coming up over the next 4 to 8 weeks from the time you're viewing this one. Love to hear your responses. If you have comments or questions, follow up and post. But we appreciate you being here. Dr. Mills, my brother, thank you.
Thank you.
I love you, man.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. God bless you. Thank you for joining this episode of Leadership Synergized Plus with Dr. Randy Mills. The book is called As If by Magic. It's the story that begins with Larry Bird's senior year of high school basketball at Springs Valley High School, but brings life much broader into focus. God bless you. Have a great day. I love you.